80% of New Year's resolutions are dead by February.
Wow, okay, strong way to start an episode.
I know, but stay with me because the part that surprised me isn't the failure. It's why it fails. It's not because people are lazy. It's because almost everyone is trying to change the wrong thing.
The wrong thing.
Yeah, and by the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly what the right thing is. And it's smaller than you think and weirder than you think.
Now I'm nervous.
Good. Stay nervous. Let's go. Hey everyone. You are listening to the Real English Podcast, your cozy place to learn easy English and improve your life at the same time. I'm Olivia.
And I'm David. And look, we are really happy you're here today. Like, out of everything you could be doing right now, you picked this. We don't take that for granted.
We really don't. And today's episode, this one took me a while to figure out. I've wanted to do this topic for a long time, and I kept not quite getting the angle right.
Olivia had how many outlines did you go through?
3. 3 is completely normal.
She sent me the third one at 11:30 at night.
Because it was important. Look, some topics you can just talk about, and some topics you need to actually get right. And this one, I wanted to get it right.
Fair. And I think you did. I'm genuinely excited for this one.
Same. Okay, so before we started recording, David, you were telling me about something. The last time you actually stuck with a change, a real one. And you said something I thought was worth starting with.
Oh, the morning thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So for context, I spent about 2 years trying to become a morning person. I was convinced that if I just woke up at 6 a.m., everything would change. I'd be productive, I'd exercise, I'd read, I'd meditate. I'd probably learn a language and start a company, you know.
Very realistic, very achievable.
Obviously. And every few months I'd try again, set the alarm, wake up completely wrecked, push through it for a week, maybe 2, then give up and then feel terrible about giving up.
And what finally changed?
I stopped trying to change the habit, and I changed the reason I had for doing it, which sounds, I don't know, it sounds small when I say it like that.
It's not small, and that's actually what today's episode is about. There's a difference between making a change and actually changing, and most of the advice out there focuses on the wrong one.
So here's what we're doing today. We're going deep on what actually makes change stick, not the motivational stuff, not believe in yourself and you can do it, the real stuff, the stuff that holds when the excitement wears off and real life shows up.
And I'll say now, some of this is going to feel counterintuitive. A couple of these ideas genuinely changed how I think about this whole thing. We're going to talk about why most people fail at change and why it's not their fault, what identity has to do with habits, why timing matters more than most people realize, and something I think is the most useful idea in this whole space, the concept of never failing, just iterating.
That last one, I really want to get to that one.
Me too. Okay, one quick thing before we start. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I know someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. Genuinely. That's a kind thing to do for someone you care about.
And if you want to tell us where you're listening from, drop a comment. We do read them. That's not a thing we just say.
Okay, let's go. So let's start with the thing nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone kind of needs to hear.
Go on.
Willpower doesn't work. Or at least not the way we think it does.
Okay, I know people's first instinct is to push back on that because it kind of sounds like an excuse, right?
Exactly. Like, oh, I don't need willpower. Convenient.
Right, but the research is pretty clear. Willpower is limited. It runs out. And one of the reasons so many change attempts collapse in week 2 or 3 is that we're relying on a resource that's already used up by Tuesday afternoon.
Jennifer Sumner from Columbia University, she put it really honestly. She said, there's been a massive amount of work done to help people change their behavior, but almost none of it helps them maintain those changes over time. We're actually good at starting. We're terrible at continuing.
Which is a pretty honest thing to admit about a whole field of research.
Yeah, and I think it maps to what most of us have experienced ourselves. The problem is never getting motivated to start. We know how to get motivated.
January 1st is proof of that.
Every year, the gyms are packed, the planners are bought, the journaling apps are downloaded.
And then February.
And then February. So the question is not, how do I start? The question is, why does it fall apart? And I think it falls apart for one specific reason.
Which is?
Right. So James Clear, he wrote Atomic Habits, and if you haven't read it, it's worth it. He makes this point that really stayed with me. He says the word identity comes from two Latin roots, essentitas, which means being, and identidem, meaning repeatedly. So your identity is literally your repeated beingness. It's who you are by what you keep doing.
So it's not a fixed thing. It's something you build by repeating.
Exactly. And here's why that matters. If you're trying to go to the gym, but deep down you don't see yourself as someone who exercises, you're fighting your own identity every single day. The gym isn't the hard part. The belief is the hard part.
So the picture you have of yourself is actually working against the behavior you're trying to build.
Yes, and that is exhausting. Willpower can override it for a week or two, but eventually the self-image wins.
I felt this with the morning thing. I was never actually a morning person in my head. I was a night owl cosplaying as one.
And your brain knew it.
My brain absolutely knew it.
Clear has this example I love. Two people get offered a cigarette. One says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The other says, "No thanks, I don't smoke." Those are two completely different people. The first one is still a smoker who's fighting. The second has already updated who they are.
The second one sounds so much more settled.
It is, and the long-term difference between those two people is enormous.
So how do you actually change the identity? Because you can't just decide, I'm a runner now, and have that be real.
Right, you can't just say it, you have to earn it. And that's where the small stuff comes in. But hold on, I want to come back to that because there's something else I need to talk about first. Timing. There's one piece of research on when to change that I think most people have never heard of, and it matters more than we think. Okay, tell me about the timing thing. So this is from Katie Milkman, who's a behavioral economist at the University of Pennsylvania. She wrote a book called How to Change, and one of the things she studied is what she calls the fresh start effect.
Which sounds like a shampoo.
It does a little, but the idea is genuinely useful. What she found is that people are significantly more likely to actually attempt a change right after a temporal landmark, a fresh start moment.
What's a temporal landmark?
Just a moment in time that feels like a clear before and after. A new year, a birthday, the first of the month, even just a Monday.
So that's why New Year's resolutions exist.
Exactly. And it's not just culture, there's a real psychological mechanism behind it. These fresh start moments help people mentally separate from their past self. Like, that was the old me, this is the new me. And that distance from past failures actually makes people more willing to try again.
Okay, that's interesting, because I always thought the whole New Year thing was a bit silly. Like, what does a date on a calendar make any difference?
Because the date is just a cue, and what it's cueing is permission to start over. And psychologically, that's genuinely useful.
So it's not really about the date, it's about the reset feeling.
Right, which means you can create that feeling yourself. You don't have to wait for January 1st. A new season, moving somewhere, a birthday, even coming back from a trip. These all have that clean slate quality if you choose to use them that way.
I'm connecting this to the identity thing from before, because a fresh start is also a moment to ask, okay, who do I want to be from here?
Yes, and that's when identity-based changes are most powerful to start, when there's already a natural before and after in your life.
There was some research about people who'd recently moved, right?
Yeah, Verplanken and Roy looked at about 800 people. Half had moved in the last 6 months, half hadn't. When they offered behavior change interventions to both groups, the people who'd recently moved were much more likely to actually change because they were already disrupted. The old habits weren't as automatic, the old environment wasn't there pulling them back.
So a big life change, even a stressful one, can actually be a window.
If you catch it, the window opens, but it doesn't stay open forever, which is another reason timing matters.
Okay, so we've got identity matters more than behavior. Timing matters more than most people think. What's the third piece?
The third piece is the one I think most people need to hear. It's about failure.
Oh, that's big.
It's big. Let's get into it. So there's a part of your brain called the habenula, Habenula. Have you heard of it?
No.
Neither had I. I went down a research rabbit hole for this episode. The habenula is tiny, but it does one specific thing that is really relevant to change. When your brain detects a categorical failure, like, I tried to quit sugar and I ate a cookie, I've failed, the habenula fires. And what it does is suppress dopamine.
Dopamine is the motivation chemical.
Exactly. So your brain detects failure, and it actually turns down your drive to keep going. It's like a circuit breaker. And from an evolutionary angle, that makes sense. You don't want to keep doing something that clearly isn't working. But when you're trying to build a habit, it's devastating.
Because one cookie becomes I've ruined everything.
Right. And that feeling, the I've ruined everything feeling, it's not just emotional. There's a biological process behind it. Your brain is actually reducing your motivation to continue, which is why people don't just stop after one slip. They go completely off the rails. The diet breaks on one bad day, and then it becomes a bad week.
The what the hell effect.
Yes, that is actually what researchers call it. You break the rule once, and then your brain goes, well, what the hell? The day's ruined anyway.
I've lived this so many times.
Most people have. And the key word is categorical. The habenula fires when you categorically fail, when you say, I failed, not when you say, I missed one day.
So the solution is to never call it a failure.
The solution is to never give it a category, to never let it be, I failed. And the way you do that is through what a physician named Dr. Katie Rickel describes as the iterative mindset. The idea that every attempt at change is an experiment, not pass or fail, an experiment.
And experiments don't fail. They give you data.
Exactly. She's been studying this for over 30 years, and she found that people who achieve real long-term change have one thing in common. They iterate. They adjust, they tweak, they tinker as they go. So they never categorically fail, because the attempt is always ongoing.
This changes the emotional math completely.
How do you mean?
Because if I go to the gym Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, miss Thursday, and then feel like I failed, the failure story takes over. But if I go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, miss Thursday, and just ask, okay, why did I miss Thursday? What can I adjust? That is a completely different experience.
And the habenula doesn't fire. The motivation stays intact.
That feels almost too useful, like a trick.
It kind of is a trick, a good one. And I'll tell you where I used it. I had a stretch last year where I was really trying to read more consistently. I'd been saying for years that I wanted to read before bed, and every time I missed a night, I'd feel a little worse about it. And then I'd miss more, and then I'd just quietly stop calling myself a reader.
Right.
And then I started treating it like an experiment instead. On nights I didn't read, I'd just ask, what got in the way? And sometimes it was that my phone was charging next to the bed and it was just there, so I moved it across the room. And then I was still skipping because I was too tired by the time I got to bed. So I realized I was trying to read too late and moved it earlier in the evening. And gradually, just by noticing what actually happened instead of judging myself for it, it became something I actually do now.
And you never called it a failure.
Not once, which meant the habit was always alive, even on the nights I wasn't doing it.
That's a quiet thing, but it's actually massive.
Okay, I want to talk about environment, because I think this is the most underestimated piece.
Yeah, let's do it.
So James Clear says, motivation is overrated, environment often matters more. When I first read that, I thought, okay, that's a bit extreme. But the more I think about it, the more I think he's right.
What does he mean by environment?
Everything around you that makes a habit easier or harder. The physical space, what's visible, what's convenient, what requires effort.
Oh, so like if the fruit is on the counter and the chocolate is in the back of the cupboard.
You eat more fruit.
Without any willpower at all.
Without any. And if the chocolate is on the counter...
You eat more chocolate.
And this sounds obvious when we use the food example, but we don't apply this logic to most other areas of our lives. We set up environments that make bad habits extremely easy and then wonder why willpower isn't enough.
Give me a non-food one.
Phone. If your phone is the first thing you see in the morning because it's charging on your nightstand, you are going to look at it first thing. Not because you're weak, because it's right there and your brain is half asleep and it takes the path of least resistance.
This is me. This is literally me right now.
But if the phone charges in another room and there's a physical book on the nightstand, you might read for 10 minutes before you ever check messages. And that 10 minutes every morning, compounded over a year, is enormous.
Okay, so you're not changing your behavior, you're changing the conditions your behavior happens in.
Yes. And this connects to something Katie Milkman talks about, temptation bundling. Pair a habit you need to do with something you actually want to do. Her example, only let yourself listen to your favorite podcast while exercising. So now the gym comes with a reward you actually want. Your brain starts associating it with something pleasurable, and eventually the craving shifts.
That's clever. It hijacks the reward system.
You're not fighting the reward system, you're using it.
So the whole approach is stop fighting yourself. Design around yourself instead.
Yes, I love that. Because the version of change that's built on fighting temptation, fighting laziness, fighting old habits, that version is exhausting. You eventually get tired. But the version built on design, on setting up your environment, your schedule, your social world to support the person you want to be, that version doesn't run out.
And here's something I want to name, because some people listening might be thinking, isn't the hard way more virtuous? Shouldn't I be doing this through discipline?
I think that's worth addressing, because I get the instinct. There's something that feels noble about struggling for change. But Clear makes this point that I keep coming back to. He says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And that's not about lowering your ambition, it's about building a system that actually supports it.
Yeah, a surgeon doesn't perform surgery on willpower. There's a whole system around them that makes doing the right thing easy. Sterile tools, protocols, checklists.
Right. And we don't say surgeons are cheating because they have good systems. We say they're good surgeons.
I'm keeping that one. That's a good analogy.
It's yours. Okay, I want to pause here. We've covered 3 big ideas: identity, timing, environment. And I want to land on something that ties it all together. But first,
The word tour.
the word tour. Yes. Okay. For listeners who are also here to practice English, we've used some great words and phrases today, and I want to pull a few out.
The first one I want to highlight is temporal landmark. We used it when we talked about the fresh start effect.
Temporal means relating to time, from Latin, tempus, meaning time. And a landmark is just a recognizable point you can navigate from. So a temporal landmark is just a meaningful point in time, a new year, a birthday, a Monday.
You can use this even outside of psychology. This project is a temporal landmark for our team. It just means a moment in time that feels significant.
Next one I want to look at is iterative. We said someone with an iterative mindset tweaks and adjusts as they go.
Iterative means done in repeated cycles, each one building on the last. It comes from iterate, to go through a process again.
In everyday language, you hear this in tech. We released an iterative update, or her approach to learning piano was iterative, a little bit each day, adjusted each week.
And the opposite of iterative is all or nothing thinking, which is a phrase worth knowing too. It means you see things in black and white. You either did it perfectly or you failed completely. No middle ground. And it's one of the most common patterns that kills change.
One more?
One more.
The habenula, the little part of the brain that fires when we feel like we failed and reduces our motivation. Habenula is actually Latin for little rein, like a rein you'd use to steer a horse.
Because it's literally reining in your behavior when you failed.
Which is kind of fascinating, honestly. Your brain is trying to protect you from something it thinks isn't working.
It's not cruel, it's just wrong in this case.
Okay, I promised we'd come back to identity. Specifically, how do you actually change yours? Because that's the practical question.
Because change your identity is easy to say. How you do it is another thing.
Right. And Clear has a 2-step process that I think is genuinely useful. Step 1, decide the type of person you want to be. Not what you want to achieve, who you want to be. Step 2, prove it to yourself with small wins.
And the small wins are the votes. He talks about this.
Yes. He says every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Not a definitive statement, just a vote. So if you want to be someone who reads, every night you read one page, that's a vote. Every morning you open a book while your coffee brews, that's a vote.
And no single vote decides the election.
No single vote decides the election, but enough of them do. And over time, you look at the ballot and think, oh, there are hundreds of votes here for the person who reads. Maybe I actually am that person.
I want to add something because there's a trap in this that I've fallen into.
Go on.
The trap is you decide who you want to be and you set the bar really high. I want to be someone who meditates for 45 minutes and reads for an hour and runs 5 miles. And then you cast about 3 votes and the whole thing collapses because each vote requires too much effort.
So the identity can be right, but the votes have to be easy enough to actually cast.
Right, the vote for being a reader can be 1 page. It doesn't have to be an hour. Because once you cast enough votes, the identity consolidates, and then the behavior naturally scales.
This connects to the 2-minute rule Clear talks about. When you're starting a new habit, scale it down to something that takes 2 minutes. 2 minutes of stretching, 2 minutes of journaling, 2 minutes of language practice. Because the point isn't the 2 minutes. The point is showing up. Showing up is the vote.
It also kills the "I don't have time" excuse.
Which is usually less about time and more about the emotional weight of the task, feeling enormous.
Yes, exactly. 2 minutes feels achievable. An hour does not on a hard day.
And a hard day is when the habit matters most, because if you only do it on easy days, it's not really a habit, it's a preference.
That's going to stay with me.
There's one more layer to this that I think is massively underestimated, and that's the people around you. Clear makes this point, and it sounds simple, but it goes pretty deep. He says the most powerful thing you can do to build a habit is join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior.
So if you want to be a runner, spend time with runners.
If you want to read more, build relationships with people who talk about books. If you want to manage money better, get around people who are thoughtful about money.
Because normal is contagious.
Extremely, and in both directions. If everyone you spend your evenings with eats late, drinks, stays up until 2 a.m., you are swimming upstream constantly. Not because those people are bad, just because behavior is social. We absorb the norms of the groups we're in.
I felt this. I had a period where I was in a friend group really oriented around going out a lot, drinking a lot. And I didn't even notice how much of my whole "I'm just someone who parties on weekends" identity came from them. Not for me.
And when you moved out of that context?
I didn't miss it nearly as much as I expected because it wasn't actually me, it was the environment.
And people often think their habits are deeply personal expressions of who they are, but so much of what we do is just what the people around us do.
Which is kind of liberating, actually, because it means you're not as fixed as you think you are.
You're not. And finding even one other person who shares the change you want to make is incredibly powerful. An accountability partner, a friend who's also trying to read more or run or save money. Even an online community gives you a kind of social proof that this is doable, that it's normal, that you belong in this category.
It lowers the psychological cost of the behavior.
Perfectly put, yes.
There's something I want to name here because it can feel scary to change your social environment. Like you're not just changing a habit, you're changing your relationships.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to drop your current friends and find entirely new ones. It's more about who do you lean into? Who do you make more space for? Less about removal, more about addition.
That feels much more doable.
A lot less dramatic. And pause. I want to slow down for a second, because I think there's something underneath all of this we haven't quite said directly, and I want to try to say it.
Go ahead.
Most people who are trying to change something, they're not just trying to build a habit. They're trying to become someone they can respect.
Yeah.
And that is a really tender thing, because it means every failed attempt isn't just "I didn't go to the gym." It's "I'm still not the person I want to be." And that accumulates. It gets heavy.
I think that's true for most people, and almost nobody says it out loud.
Because it sounds vulnerable. It sounds like admitting you don't like who you are right now.
And we're not supposed to say that.
Right. We're supposed to love ourselves and be grateful for where we are. And those things have real value, but they can also become a way of not looking at something honestly.
What do you mean?
Sometimes I love myself exactly as I am becomes a way of stopping yourself from growing, because growing requires admitting there's somewhere to go, and that can feel like self-criticism.
But it doesn't have to be.
No, because there's a difference between I hate who I am and I can see who I'm becoming and I want to move toward that. One is judgment, the other is direction.
Direction is hopeful.
Direction is hopeful. And I think that's what people are actually reaching for when they try to change. Not self-punishment, direction. A sense that there's more life available to them if they make this one change, and then that change, and then the next.
I don't think I thought about it that clearly before, but yeah, that's exactly it.
And the science backs this up too. Researchers found that people who showed early positive emotional responses to a change attempt, not just I want this, but actually feeling good about who they were becoming, were far more likely to stick with it a year later. The change has to feel like a version of yourself you actually want to inhabit.
So it has to fit. It has to feel like you.
Or like the you that you want to become. There's a version of this that matters, and it's not the version we're copying from someone else's life.
Can I say something that might be a bit uncomfortable?
Please.
I think a lot of people try to change things that don't actually matter to them. They're trying to become the person they think they're supposed to be, not the person they actually want to be.
Yes, and that always fails because the identity you're building isn't yours. You're voting for someone else's election.
That's a strange image, but it works.
You know what I mean. The change has to connect to something real in you, your actual values, your actual desires, not something you absorbed from social media or from what your family expects.
And sometimes figuring out what you actually want is the harder work.
Sometimes it is the harder work. Okay, I want to get practical. We've talked about a lot of ideas, and I want to bring them down to earth.
Please.
So if someone listening today wants to actually change something, not just think about it, but do something, here's what I'd suggest. And this is coming from what we've talked about today, the research, not general advice.
Right.
First thing, get clear on the identity, not the outcome. Don't ask, what do I want to achieve? Ask, who do I want to become? Be specific, not, I want to be healthier. Something like, I'm someone who moves their body every day. Or, I'm someone who reads before reaching for their phone.
And it has to feel reachable, not a fantasy. Stretched, but real.
Stretched but reachable. Second, find a fresh start moment. You don't have to wait for January, but if there's a natural before and after in your life right now, a new week, something changing in your circumstances, use it. That clean slate feeling is real.
Third, and this one matters, design your environment before you try to change your behavior. Make the new habit as easy as possible. Make the old habit as effortful as possible. Don't rely on willpower to do the work that furniture and friction can do.
Furniture and friction. I want that on a t-shirt.
It's yours.
Fourth, find your people. One person doing what you want to do. One community, even online, where your desired behavior is normal. Your environment includes the people, not just the space.
And fifth, the most important one to me, treat it like an experiment. Never call it a failure. If something isn't working, ask why. Adjust. Try again. The only real failure is stopping the experiment.
The only real failure is stopping the experiment.
I keep coming back to that because so many people have given up on things they genuinely wanted because they told themselves they'd failed. And they hadn't. They just run one test.
And a test that doesn't work is still useful. You know more now than you did before.
Right.
Okay, one last thing before we land. I want to talk about the stuff people don't usually tell you about change. The honest stuff.
Ooh, I like this.
First honest thing, change is slow. And the important part is invisible for a long time.
Clear uses this metaphor about ice, a room at 22 degrees below freezing. You're trying to melt an ice cube. You raise the temperature 1 degree, nothing. 2 degrees, nothing. 10 degrees, nothing. 26 degrees, still nothing you can see. Then you hit 32. 1 degree above freezing, and it starts to melt.
And you might think nothing was happening for all those degrees, but the work was real. The change was accumulating, just not visible yet.
And that's the stage most people quit during, the invisible stage.
They quit at 28 degrees and say it doesn't work, but the ice was almost there.
Second honest thing?
You will backslide. It will happen. The question is whether you treat it as information or as proof that you failed.
Iteration, not failure.
Iteration, not failure. Third honest thing, and this one's harder. Some things will resist change until you address what's underneath them. Sometimes a habit isn't just a habit. Sometimes people stress eat because they haven't processed grief. Sometimes people procrastinate because they're afraid of being judged. Sometimes people can't get out of bed because they're not just tired, they're sad.
And you can't habit stack your way out of something emotional.
Not entirely. And I think it's important to say that, because when people try to apply habit change systems to problems that are actually about something else, and it doesn't work, they blame themselves. And it's not their fault. Some things need different kinds of attention.
And that's okay to acknowledge.
It really is.
Fourth honest thing?
The last thing I want to say is the people who change most consistently are not the most disciplined. They're the most self-aware. They know their patterns. They know what triggers their bad habits. They know what conditions help their good ones. And they adjust based on that knowledge, not on pushing harder.
Self-awareness over self-punishment.
Every time. Okay, let's land this.
That was a long conversation.
A good long one, I think.
The best kind.
We started with a question. The last time you tried to change something, how long did it last? And I think by now we have some real answers for why it might not have, and more importantly, what actually works.
Identity first, not outcomes.
Use your environment. Design, don't fight.
Find your timing. Use the fresh start.
Find your people. Change is social.
And never call it a failure. Iterate.
And underneath all of it, know that the reason you want to change is almost always something real and human, a desire to be someone you can respect, to have a life that feels more like yours.
And that is not a small desire. That is actually everything.
That's actually everything. And if you carry one thing out of today, let it be this. You're not trying to build habits. You're casting votes for a version of yourself you actually want to become. Do it imperfectly. Do it slowly. Do it in small ways on hard days. But keep casting the votes.
And when you miss a vote, ask why. Not what's wrong with me, but what got in the way and what can I adjust?
And then keep going. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Genuinely, this episode meant a lot to us to make, and I hope it lands for you in some real way, not just as information, but as something that actually changes how you think about what's possible for you.
We will be back very soon, and if this episode gave you something, if there was one idea or one moment that hit differently, we'd love to know. Drop it in the comments.
And if you know someone who is in that place right now, trying to change something, feeling stuck, feeling like they keep starting over, send this to them. That's a kind thing to do.
This was the Real English Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Olivia. Take care, keep going, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.